Hi. Well, it is something really completely different from me. I'm Jacqueline Whitehart, and I am a hybrid author. And if you don't know what that means, it means that I write books that are, some of them are self-published by me through my own imprint, and some of them are published through a big publisher. And in my case, that's HarperCollins. So, I'm going to be a little bit cheesy, and I don't mind telling you that I'm a little bit out of my comfort zone here. And I want to say that because one of the things I've learned is that to be a successful author, you need to engage with your readers and your fans. And to do that, you have to be human and relatable and real. So you have to show your imperfections and your mistakes and not appear as this person that you can't reach. You're just a normal, average person that happens to write books. So I don't spend that much of my time actually writing. I spend a lot of my time on social media. I spend a lot of time on Facebook, chatting to people, answering their questions. I give out my email address to everyone, and I do answer all their questions. And all the time, I'm always polite, even if it's the middle of the night and they ask me something daft, I'm always there. And that's how you build a fan base. And you've got to build your fan base because they're the ones that buy your books. And if you don't sell books, you're not an author, or not a successful author anyway. So I'm going to start by talking about, I've got 2 books out this year. One is self-published, and one is published through HarperCollins. And that one there is the one that was published by HarperCollins. And later on, I'll show you the one that I have done that's self-published. And hopefully you won't see much difference in terms of the quality and the style. And definitely my readers can't tell the difference between what's published through my own efforts and what's published through HarperCollins' efforts. But that wasn't always the case. So when I started out, my first attempts at writing a book and publishing a book and designing the book were a bit dire. So I'm going to go back to the beginning and sort of explain a little bit more about my journey to becoming a successful author. So back in 2013, I was looking for a bit of a career change because I'd got 3 young children at home, and I wanted to get a good work-life balance, which is always tricky. And I was also on a diet. And I was on a diet which was called the 5-2 diet, which some of you may have heard of. And I was following it and like making my own recipes. But the 5-2 diet was just beginning. It didn't really even have a name. So I was looking for information on the 5-2 diet, and I couldn't find any. So I just went, you know what, someone needs to publish a book on this. I'm going to give it a go. And that was the start of my journey to being the author that I am now. And at that time, I didn't have any experience of working in the publishing industry. I'd never written a book before. I'd never written anything before. So everything was brand new. And you can see, actually, when I first started, this is my first book that I brought out. And there's several things wrong with that, especially if you're a designer, and I know there's quite a few people here. First of all, it is a really hideous brown cover. And that lady on there, I don't know who she is. That's a stock photo that I got off the internet, and I had quite a lot of problem right in the early days where they thought that was me. So I had to get rid of that straight away. I don't even know her name. Poor lady. But luckily, I was a quick learner. So within a few months, I'd moved to this cover, which I think we can all agree is a much better and more book-like design. And the reason that that looks so much better was that I had paid to have that cover design for me. So the inside was still getting there, but one of the things that I learnt very quickly is pay to have a good cover design. So really this was the start of my journey to being a real author, if you like, because this book started to sell. I started to get reviews, which is a good place to start. And then, because I was self-publishing through Amazon's tools, you actually get real-time information on how many books you're selling in an hour, you know, all the time. And I could see that going up, and it was fantastic. It was really exciting. And I got to number 5 in the UK charts. And I sold over 100,000 copies of that book. It was really an amazing year. And then in the middle of that, I had a call from HarperCollins. And they said, can we publish your book? And I had to say no, because actually they couldn't offer me the amount of money that I was getting through self-publishing, because they'd be taking a cut out of it. So I had to say no to HarperCollins on that, but I did get a new book out with them. So they published 2 more books with me, and they were successful, but it was a very different experience, because you just write the book. I didn't do the cover, I didn't do anything else other than do the writing and send it to them. And also the financial side was really different. You get paid a chunk of money in advance, but then you don't see much afterwards. Whereas with self-publishing, you take the risk yourself, but then you get a regular income, you hope, from the book. So really different. But I wouldn't turn down the opportunity to have a publisher, because there is kudos still involved in that. I did like going for lunches with my editor. I did like the launch party, and I did like having my book being in Tesco's. So I do both. So this year, I've got 2 books out, 28-Day Gut Health Plan and the new 5-2 book. That book, the style of it and the professionalism in the way I've designed it, or paid the right people to do the design for me, shows how far I've come. There is very little you can tell between a book that's been published by HarperCollins and published through my tools. So everything for me was done by myself, and the royalties are mine alone. What is interesting is which one out of the 2 books that I did this year do you think might have earned me more money? And in fact, it was the self-published one by quite a long way, and that income will continue for a year or 2 afterwards. So I think, sort of going back to the absolute basics in a minute, you don't need a publisher to release a book. You just need an idea, and you need a quality product. So that isn't just about the writing. It is about the editing, the cover, the formatting, and you need to bring your book out. Probably the first thing you need to do is to bring it out to Kindle, because especially if you're a fiction book, you get about 90% of your readers through Kindle, and it is really easy to bring it out onto Kindle. I could tell you a little bit about the tools you use, but there are things called Kindle Select, which helps you promote your book, and also a tool called Scrivener, which will help you write and make your book available as an EPUB. As I said before, there is only one thing that I would pay for, and that is cover design. So you can do all of this with a bit of time and commitment. You could do all of this, and the only thing you would pay for is your cover design. But that is absolutely what I would do. So and I've just written down what I would say are my 3 top tips, my 3 secrets of success. So Kindle and Kindle Select, And if you only pay for one thing, it's definitely cover design, and make friends with your readers. Okay, I think that's it.
Thank you. Thank you, Jacqueline. Now I can imagine a sort of swathe of questions from people that want to write for themselves, a swathe of questions from people that are marketing something similar, and your experience is going to address that a lot. So be thinking of those. I'll be coming in a second. A couple of years ago, Cory Doctorow wrote a book called Information Doesn't Want to Be Free, People Do, essentially about publishing, digital publishing in particular.
Yeah.
And one of the main takeaways from that book is publishing as we know it is dead, it's finished. And if you're now at a junction and a hybrid writer as yourself, why would you go down that old school route when you know there's no future for that industry? You've got your own followers, you know you can market, you can engage directly yourself. That's the world you should be creating for yourself as an author, which seems to be borne out by what you've said.
Yes.
So that's a long-winded way of getting to a question that says, for your next book that you've not written yet, would you even consider going with a traditional publisher, or now you've proven to yourself that you are your own person and your own publisher, that's the way for you?
No, I do still like to bring out a book with a publisher. I try and do one a year. And the reason for that, it's just because you feel... my mum is happier when I'm finished. She can tell her friends. And there is that sort of, if you're talking about what you do, if I was talking to you as a self-published author, then perhaps that wouldn't give me as much weight as someone that has been successfully published by a traditional publisher. I do think I could teach them a thing or two about how to sell a book, how to market a book, because there's a lot of, they have a lot of boxes to tick. It's again to do with being a big corporation and being sort of a small player. So I found that for me, it's to do both, because I like the kudos, but I also, I earn more and have a lot more control when I do it myself.
Thank you for being so frank, because it's crazy, isn't it? How long can that last? That it's nothing to do with economics, it's nothing to do with professionalism inherently. No. It's purely the stigma of being a self-published author that's the only thing.
Yeah, and it is the stigma of it. So I've said to a couple of people back in the early days, oh, I'm an author. And then they sort of say, oh, well, who is your publisher? And it is sort of, and if you say yourself, then it just doesn't have the thing. So actually, I have my own publishing imprint, which is just me.
Have you ever thought of, have you ever explored the possibility of completely disintermediating the publisher and going straight to a distributor like Tesco?
Yes, and I couldn't manage it.
Okay.
So there are things through Amazon where you can get stuff into bookshops, but it doesn't seem to work with the supermarket. So I can get it into Smith's, but I can't get it into the supermarkets.
Okay.
And then that is where quite a lot of those book sales come from, is people picking it up with their shopping.
Does that mean there's an opportunity there for somebody to facilitate that direct-to-distribution?
Yeah, and I couldn't manage it, so...
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. You heard it here first. I'm going to throw this open. Any questions for Jacqueline, please? Yes, please.
Yeah, it was definitely trial and error. I mean, I am technical. Back in the day, I used to do websites and stuff before I decided on a bit of a career change. So I wasn't afraid of the technology and learning it. And some of the stuff that I do now is, there are some authors there that do need a bit of help. And there is more resources becoming available. But yeah, it is trial and error and teaching yourself, really.
Thank you. Another question, please. Yes, please.
Yes, unfortunately, I ran out of time. But yes, I do, because I write cookery and diet books, I do paperbacks as well, because in the cookery and diet sector, I actually sell more paperbacks than Kindle books. And I use CreateSpace, which is Amazon's tool for making paperbacks. And again, that's great, and that's free. And so you can get your book, put it onto CreateSpace, and get it live within a couple of days, and then people can just buy your book and have it delivered with Prime in a couple of days, and that's amazing. Yeah.
Great, thank you. I saw one last question. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely, because I was starting, I didn't really have a clue what I was doing. So I self-published to start with, and then I did put an email address on there, and then I realized as I went along, as I became, I wanted to make it more my career rather than just trying it out. That's when I discovered that I needed a blog, so I blog all my recipes, and to start communicating. And that's become, I spend a lot more time doing that now than I used to.
Thank you very much. Unfortunately, we've got to stop there because I know there's a couple more questions. So do find Jacqueline over food through in the other room. Could you put your hands together for Jacqueline and all our speakers in the second session?